a production of South Carolina ETV.
Last Sunday we were out here with hundreds of those critters.
Well, they'll be here again.
He's a typical South Carolinian, a typical Charlestonian.
We call him affectionately the bull-headed Dutchman.
Out there, but you see that looks like a tanker way out there on the horizon. Well, see it way out there.
If he had never served a day in any office after being governor, he would have made a monumental contribution to South Carolina.
Fritz is so serious about the work that he does.
He's probably the most respected legislator up here.
I haven't had any idea being remembered. Just conscientious and hardworking. I've said in government that what a man will do in politics is best proved by what he's done. Performance is better than promise.
Ernest Frederick Hollings was born in Charleston, South Carolina on New Year's Day, 1922, the fourth of 5 children. He finished public school at 16 and graduated from the Citadel in 1942. He served during World War II in North Africa and Europe in the Army and left as a captain. After receiving a law degree from the University of South Carolina, he began politics.
And Fritz's father used to have a distributor, a store in Charleston that he sold stuff to these country stores. And my father liked Fritz's father very much. He wouldn't buy nothing from nobody except what Mr. Hollings sold. In the Depression, he went broke. We all went down and pitched in, trying to keep things alive and going, but he finally ended up as a salesman, and then he traveled around to the same stores he served for another company. And when I got out on the trail, I didn't know how much that meant, but that was a country store, and whether or not you could get your card at that cash register or the corner store, and they'd look at me, and they'd say, "You Bubba Hollings' boy?" And I'd say, "Yes, sir." They'd say, "Well, if you're half as honest as your daddy, put your cards there, we'll get you some votes." And just that good name. He didn't leave me 1 cent in actual money, but he left me a millionaire in reputation.
In 1948, Fritz Hollings was elected to the South Carolina House of Representatives, serving as Speaker pro tempore for 3 years. The United States Junior Chamber of Commerce selected him as one of America's 10 outstanding young men in 1954. That same year, he became one of South Carolina's youngest lieutenant governors.
Hollings entered American politics at a time when there was an opportunity to make change. And the essential ingredient in making that change was enthusiasm and energy and the willingness and the will to do it.
In 1958, he ran against former University of South Carolina President Donald Russell in the Democratic primary for governor. Hollings won and became the state's chief executive officer at 37.
We all have a mutual challenge, one mutual goal, and that is for South Carolina to provide the best opportunity for all its citizens.
When Senator Hollings became governor in 1959, the state was faced with a deficit. And he recognized that we could not attract industry if we did not have the state on a sound financial basis.
By raising taxes and cutting spending, South Carolina under the Hollings administration balanced the state's budget, achieving the AAA credit rating. The governor then went after jobs.
Governor Luther Hodges was our chief competition from North Carolina, and we would try to stay ahead of Luther Hodges and get there before he did. You've got to position yourself. 14,000 chambers of commerce, committees of 100 are barreling into New York saying we'll cook your barbecue, give you a drink, happy days, moonlight and magnolias. That's nonsense. They want to get their operation into the black.
Fritz was a one-man sales team at the time, and he went into California to meet with some upper-level management people in a national industry, and pretty well sold them with his articulate nature and personality, and promised them that we could do a number of things that would be covered by the technical education program. The only thing at the time, there was no such program in South Carolina. But I think he says, you know, we will do this, and then he came back and saw that we did do it.
That's when the technical training program was born. We decided that we would have a program designed to train workers for specific industries. And we also would develop a program of technical vocational centers that would service every area of the state.
I've never had an industry come and say, you promised, but you didn't perform.
Industry brought over $700 million and 40,000 new jobs to the state. Other issues included education, insurance, mental health, and concerns of textile workers and farmers. While many Southern politicians spoke of states' rights and condemned integration, Hollings took another stance as he left the governor's office.
January of 1963, when his other colleagues throughout the South, the other governors, were making a very popular demagogic stands against racial integration. Fritz Hollings had the courage to say to the people of South Carolina, we must integrate our colleges peacefully.
He got up and it was so tense you could just sense it. He said, we're a government of laws, not of men. He says, Harvey Gantt will be admitted to Clemson. There will be no violence.
Senator Kennedy's record of wanting and to represent all sections of this nation, and his record of service to all sections of this nation is unquestioned.
He is the reason that John F. Kennedy carried South Carolina by 10,000 votes in 1960. Hollings put his reputation on the line. He stumped the state for John F. Kennedy and is the reason that Kennedy won. That might have cost Hollings the Senate race in '62.
I got interested in politics early, in my teen age. I determined then that I was going into politics and try to do something for the working people of this state.
Important concern for now and the future is, shall we continue to tolerate Senator Johnson in the United States Senate? And this must be decided now in June, not in November. We must ask, frankly, has he represented South Carolina, or has he just represented himself?
Hollings' decision to challenge Olin D. Johnston is probably one of the bravest acts in his political career. I don't know if he would consider it brave or perhaps even foolhardy, because the senator had been in office for a very long time, had a great deal of seniority, and had powerful committee posts. And I think in the final analysis, Senator Hollings would agree that he really never had a chance to unseat the senator, and he did lose very badly in that election.
Here comes the Fritz, fellas, course it's Fritz, fellas, the nights of this when all is said and done. Golly gee, fellas, he's for we, fellas, we need Fritz for us in Washington. Fritz Hollings!
Today, modern republicanism says, throw your sticks away here in our Southland and shout loudly, holler to the top of your voice. And they run around in circles with the old Navy expression, when in danger, when in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout. And that's the Republican cause.
Particularly want to direct your attention to my record of performance in a little more than a year.
The 1966 primary was different, quite different, and that both Russell and Hollings had run against each other once before. Hollings defeated Russell in that election in 1958. And the primary was such that people in South Carolina were disturbed over the fact that Russell had been responsible for his own appointment to the U.S. Senate.
Hollings defeated Russell in the primary, but encountered a tougher win in the general election against Republican Marshall Parker. As Hollings took office, it was a time of wars, a war on poverty and a war in Vietnam.
He came back and basically was called over to the White House almost immediately after his return. And Lyndon Johnson was there to greet him, and he said, well, what did you think? And Senator Hollings said, if we don't bomb some particular targets, it's going to be a long, long, unpopular war. And we're not going to win this war the way it's being fought now.
Many good reasons not to have a declaration of war. The President, acting as Commander-in-Chief, has the full support of the Congress, reaffirmed only a week ago, and to say this war is unconstitutional is not the fact and is not the law.
Well, it is shocking that in 1968 it's still this bad. With the lowest per capita income state, second from the bottom, it's not a surprise at all that we do have poverty, but the housing conditions there are no less than shocking.
Fritz Hollings actually came out, spent days going from home to home, looking in refrigerators, looking at the roofs that was actually leaking, met with families, saw the areas where water was not available and inadequate sanitary facilities did exist, or none in existence at all. He showed his caringness with finesse, with professionalism, with tact, with concern, and with wisdom.
The poverty tours led to a book and an agenda which included nutrition for poor women and children, further development of the food stamp and Medicaid programs, and the addition of low-cost preventative health care.
I think from a moral standpoint, I think, the compassion that he had for the people and the need. I think the need was clearly identified at the time, and he took the initiative to at least do something and make a change.
In social areas, some observers would say Hollings is a liberal. In other areas, a conservative.
I believe that Fritz Hollings knows more about the federal budget than any person in the country, bar none.
If you eliminated the Budget Committee, the President, the Congress, the courts, the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Program, the Environment Program, your Nuclear Waste Program, Department of Interior, the Indian Program, all foreign aid, and just eliminated the rest of government. At this minute, we're spending $100 billion more than we'd be taking in.
As senior member of the Budget Committee, Hollings has led numerous initiatives to curb deficit spending. In 1985, he co-authored the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Reduction Act, so-called the Graham-Rudman-Hollings Bill. Its intention was to balance the federal budget by 1991.
Let me let our colleague Fritz Hollings and then the co-sponsors of this bill make a statement. Fritz.
Thank you, Phil. I'm glad to join Senator Graham and Senator Rudman. I'm an endangered species. I have voted for a balanced budget as a member of Congress.
Efforts to protect the South Carolina textile industry urged fairness in competition, pushing Congress to pass a bipartisan, comprehensive trade policy.
One of the things that the import of textiles and apparel was doing was cutting the standards of workers in this country, that we couldn't compete with $1 an hour in some places and 27 cents an hour in other places. So his main concern was taking care of the people he represented.
Why is the textile bill that you're supporting so important?
The bill is so important, actually, to enforce these 34 agreements. We have 34 bilaterals. I have them right here. The mentality in the Congress is we deserve to go out of business. Read the New Republic. And these magazine articles for this sophisticated Georgetown drawing room crowd up here. And you'll understand that we're gone if we don't sober up.
Senator Ernest Hollings of South Carolina is tall, white-haired, shoulders back, chin up, a bit of a southern accent, and now in addition to all of that, he is a candidate for president.
I am announcing today my candidacy for the presidency of the United States.
I think he ran for president because he thought that this government could accomplish something for the country, and I think it really galls him to see people coming to town who don't like government. I want to run government, I want to preside over government, but I don't like government. And that is fundamentally repulsive to Senator Hollings. He thinks government, disciplined government, well-administered government, has a positive role to play in moving this country forward, in educating its people, in making it competitive in the economic marketplace of the globe, and he believes that that resource has to be hands-on leadership. Use it, it's the friend of the people, it's the vehicle to save the country.
On February 28th, the people of New Hampshire will go to the polls and send a message to the American people. Let's make sure that message makes sense. Fritz Hollings for president.
The path to the White House ended in New Hampshire.
Frankly, I think part of it was that he was a Southerner, and I think that hurt. I don't think it was controlling, but it certainly wasn't an advantage. Secondly, he is a maverick. In the midst of that campaign, there were 7 or 8 people running, and everybody had their solutions for this and that, and he says, why don't we freeze the budget? And that was one of the principal things that he advocated, and it seemed so simple that all of the Washington gurus couldn't quite buy it, and its great promise was in its simplicity. Third, and this is not quite so complimentary, he has a habit, not a habit, but an inclination sometimes to say the wrong things and to use the wrong expression, and he gets himself into political difficulty, and he did that a couple of times. Fourth, there was the money problem. And fifth, he is very much a hands-on person. He really likes to have control of what he's doing, and he never was willing in his own mind to delegate and to give up enough responsibility in that campaign to other people so that he could do what he can do best.
Today, the junior senator from South Carolina is the 6th ranking member in the Senate. While not the power of the White House, it is a power which reaches far.
Here in the Senate, your important roles tend to come as much from your committee assignments as anything else. Fritz, of course, has 2 powerful committee assignments due to his seniority. He is chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee. That is a very important committee. Lots of legislation comes out of that committee. Many issues affecting this country and the world come out of that committee, and he is the leader of that committee. He also is chairman on a committee that I'm now the ranking member called Commerce, State, Justice, Subcommittee of Appropriations. That committee is a huge budget. It's $15, $17 billion a year dealing with some of the most important agencies in the country. So he and I together have a dual role of fashioning that legislation. And of course, that is a terrific power base to get things done.
I can authorize everything in the world. I can be on the Today Show and the Good Morning America and on the Sunday talk shows talking about my plan, which I do about, and I believe strongly in, for the drug enforcement policy of America. And I get all done, I get everybody vote for it, and then it goes over to Fritz Hollings, and Fritz is the guy that says, this is good, this works, this doesn't, bang, 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 zip, zip. He cuts it out and he appropriates the money.
As chairman of the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, Hollings oversees NASA.
Do we have an audit mission for NASA that we can look out over a period of 5 to 10 years to know where we're headed?
Railroads.
Does Conrail intend to sue the union for furnishing a drunk driver?
The oceans and environment.
Because I'm worried about the regular performance of the Coast Guard and keeping the reserve up.
And broadcasting.
I want to rock.
Rock videos like this were shown at a 1985 Senate hearing.
I
would tell you it's outrageous filth. And the other
As an orator, Hollings does not hesitate to use his debating skills, learned as a trial lawyer.
My question is, would the Soviet Union, if they perceived that strength, what would their step be? What would the Soviet Union do?
They're going to continue right on, I would guess. I don't know.
So they're going to continue on.
Right.
And if they continue on, then what will our response be?
Oh, we're going to continue on. We live in the real world. You don't think arms control agreements, or as you said, we have this ABM treaty that defends us. Hooey, that's already been violated.
Such debates of international conflicts paled when Hollings' own Charleston faced a new threat. When Hugo hit South Carolina in September 1989, he became the chief critic of FEMA.
Fritz Hollings was an absolute tiger on behalf of the state of South Carolina after the hurricane. A lot of people were wringing their hands and saying, you know, it's not going so well with FEMA. And doggone it, Hollings said, look, my people in South Carolina are hurting, and he had the courage to go and speak out for us.
A longer storm with more devastating effect is that of drugs and its impact on America. The 1990 statewide drug hearings held before the Appropriations Committee, chaired by Hollings, resulted in increased federal funding to South Carolina to fight substance abuse.
Number the square, so that's what we'll do. But we need to call the March of Dimes and find out, just talk to her and ask to keep reporting in about the reservation so we'll have some idea.
Rita Louise Liddy, Pete, and Fritz were married in 1971. She is one of the few congressional wives who not only works in her husband's office, but also travels with him.
Because I'm involved in what goes on in the office, then I know what, you know, rather than just kind of stand there, hi, how are you, how's your family? Then I, you know, can just get right in there. And I enjoy that. Now, I am very careful that if I disagree with Fritz on an issue, that I do not talk about it. Because he's the one that's elected to office, he's the one that has to vote. So I don't disagree with him publicly, but I mean, I do disagree with him privately. And I lobby, but, you know, I guess he listens to me like he listens to any other constituent.
Peachy's my best calling card. I can tell you right now, she is the best. She started in public education as a teacher for over 10 years in Florida and South Carolina, and in the rural areas too. And she continues to teach. I'm the pupil. But she goes out and is powerfully interested in everything we do. And she's the best called on in Washington to give a talk to the bankers group, to the savings and loan, to the farmers' wives when they come, because she can go down and talk on all these different subjects, but she can give you an update on this budget. She reads everything. She's totally aware, and, you know, you've got the intellectual genius that can read a book a day just by turning the pages, and then you've got the sensitive kind of genius. When somebody dies, I'll say, well, I'm sure I'm sorry. When you say that, she's hurt. She's a sensitive genius.
You know me, Senator?
Yes, sir. I'm delighted to see you.
You see us on the weekend, you see us at social events, you see us on the floor of the United States Senate. And that's the one thing South Carolinians won't stand for, is some two-faced fellow or devious public servant. Even if they don't agree with you, they would appreciate and only contend with you telling the truth and standing for what you believe in. And I think that's what's gotten me elected 5 times, because they know where I stand.
He fights for what he believes in. He stands up and speaks out. And he has what I think is that rarest of things in American politics, independence of judgment. Fritz Hollings is nobody's man.
Now where's the rush while it's working? While it's working on the president's blockade, where we can keep them together. We ought to Arabize Arabia. We need the time, Mr. President. We need to redeploy. We need to get all of those ground forces of the United States off that desert, leave the 200,000 Arab forces there, not as a trigger, but as a bait. We've got our Air Force. We'll keep them and the Navy there, and if Saddam comes over, we'll really have an Arab versus Arab war, and then we get some credibility in this thing, and then we might win. But we've made it an American war and an American attack and an American invasion, a superpower against a third world country for oil.
when Fritz votes, you know that the only thing that is dictating his vote is his conscience.
Senator Hollings does not, on occasion, mind offending people if he thinks that his position is correct and if what he's looking for is the right thing to do. He really does not hesitate to go against the grain.
He's been a terrific senator in my book. I know one thing. He's my friend, and I know I'm his. And by I know he's a good man, there's nothing in the world he could gain to be a friend of mine. Nothing. Politically, or economical, or religious. There's nothing that he could gain from being a friend of a ignorant poor thing as I am, but if he wasn't a good man.
Oh, I think he loves what he's doing, and because there are too many opportunities that come, maybe not every day, but very often, to do something else, something that would be far more lucrative financially for him. But he loves what he's doing, and he thinks that he really is making a difference.
Senator Fritz Hollings is in his 5th term, ranked 6th in seniority after over 40 years in public office.